when he come back, he's still going to be king of the Jews.
Right.
Guess who he's coming back for?
All
Those
right.
people who heart is circumcised and those people that became Jews. Yeah. Who is a Christian? It was the Jews, the ones that were following Christ.
The prophet Jeremiah began to speak. He spoke about a new covenant of circumcision that replaced that old covenant of circumcision.
Ask questions, seek out knowledge. Don't just accept it because somebody said it.
We're good. It's good. It's good. We'll be here like 2 minutes. I'll show you after the day just in case we need you. All right. We say Shabbat Shalom. We want to welcome you to our Sabbath Class live. This is our, third week on the Feast of Chanukah, which is also known as the Feast of Dedication, which is also known as Hanukkah. We got a great lesson. I want to first start off by acknowledging our churches, Bethel Temple and College in Chicago, Illinois. Can you say Shabbat Shalom to Bethel Temple in Nashville, Tennessee, to those in Coral Springs, Florida. We say Shabbat Shalom to our evangelists, our Church of Dominican Republic, and to those in East and West Africa. We say Shabbat Shalom to all of those that are viewing our live stream via our Facebook page at #RestorationGospel, or you may be viewing our lesson on YouTube at Bethel TV 1. We want to welcome you to our Shabbat class. So this is the third lesson, correct? Third lesson. And I was excited about the lesson on last week, and this is going to be a continuation of the lesson on last week. And I'll just state this for a couple of minutes. If there are people who may have been in and out last week, or if there are those who have, this is their first time joining this series of class to understand what our goal and objective is. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about this feast that is coming up, this holy day that's coming up, called Chanukah or Hanukkah, or as you see in John, the 10th chapter, verse 22, the Feast of Dedication. And we're showing from the past how the past justifies the future. In other words, we're looking at Christ in the book of John, the 10th chapter, that went up and kept the Feast of Dedication. And the most important thing that we get out of this series of lessons, besides the major background that we're going to talk a little bit more about today, is understanding that whatever Christ did and whatever Christ taught and whatever Christ commanded is part of what we call the gospel. And I want to remind the listeners of what Apostle Paul said, that if I or an angel from heaven teach any other gospel than the one that he preached, let them be under God's curse. And so we have to make sure today in the 21st century, I know some people are going to say that sounds far-fetched, that we have to be teaching what Christ and the apostles taught. Well, what is your definition then of being a Christian? So we have an obligation to the world. And we read every week in the book of Revelations, the 12th chapter, we talk about the entire world being deceived. And I always kind of focus on this word deceive, is you never knew that you were tricked. until judgment day. Until he says, depart from me, you works of iniquity. You're like, well, what did I do? So if you can identify, and if you don't understand what the gospel is, when someone is giving you information like Kanuka that we're talking about today, when people are giving you parts of the gospel and you reject those things because you're not aware that they were part of the gospel, then you're rejecting Christ. Christ, as our perfect example, kept this feast day. And I'm not going to go back over the last few weeks, but we showed over the last few weeks, and we justified Christ keeping this feast day. I was thinking about this week. Of course, I do a lot of marketing stuff online. I was thinking about this week. And the thought that came across to me as we go into this season of celebration for whether you're doing Kanuka or whether folks are doing their thing, is that, how consciously, how is it that people celebrate a holiday or celebrate something and throw Christ all in the mix of it when you never see Christ doing it in the Bible? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years after his birth, you never see them talk about celebrating Christ's birth or what they call Christmas. Among the apostles after Christ left, you never see them talk about a celebration of Christmas. Among Apostle Paul, among the first century, among the second century people, you never see them celebrating this festival. So we talk a lot about this on our podcast, that there are some traditions that it's okay. It's okay to keep some traditions. Now, when I say keep some traditions, I'm not talking about religious traditions. There are a lot of traditions we do in this world, in this country and in other countries, that don't go against the Bible. So I'm not saying traditions are bad. But we're talking about something that Christ told us in the Bible, or through the prophet Jeremiah. Says, learn not the ways of the heathens. And when you find religious practices that have these heathen tie-ins, the Bible is telling you not to learn of those ways. And so we're going to move on today, and we're going to talk about the covenant. We're going to talk about what is so significant and what is so important about this festival. Now, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to read a few Bible verses from the book of Maccabees. And when we read these Bible verses, if what we read don't turn the light bulb on in your head, and if something in you says, well, although I don't understand this feast, and although I've never heard about it before, this story alone tells me that this is something that should be kept. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Feast of Dedication. Does everybody have a lesson? Nashville should have had their lesson. Remembering the covenant. All right. Now, I think what we're going to do first, before we get into this, I am going to read some of these Bible verses. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the readings. We're going to go down to the readings, so we're going to read that first. Yep. The readings. We're going to go down to the readings, baby. If you scroll down, there's something that says readings. Okay. So I want you to pay close attention to some of these verses and what was taking place at that time. And I just want you to think, I'm going to read it because I want you to focus on the story and what was happening at that time. Now, it may be a little small for those on the screen, but we're going to read from 1 Maccabees, the first chapter. And I'm going to read verses 10 through 15, and then I'm going to skip down and read verses 37 through 64. Okay? Does everybody have that? Okay. Now, I'm skipping around, but pay attention to what happened. I'm going to say this. again, for those people who may not have seen the class, so we're reading from a book called the Book of Maccabees. And the Book of Maccabees was part of the Bible until 1885. There were 14 books that are called lost books of the Bible that were taken out. So this is some people may feel some type of way. They say it's not in my Bible. But we know from history that in the BC period, you had the Old Testament plus these 14 books that were part of the original Bible. It was part of the original King James Version. And just Google 1885 when these books were removed. So although some people may not have heard of the Book of Maccabees, I'm sorry. It is a true book that is part of the original Bible, okay? So I'm going to read again, First Maccabees, the first chapter, verse 10 through 15. And I'm going to skip down. We're going to read verses 37 through 64. It says, "And there came forth out of them a sinful root, Antiochus, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137 year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days came there forth out of Israel transgressors of the law, and persuaded many, saying, Let's go and make a covenant with the Gentiles that are round about us. For since we were parted from them, many evils have befallen us." So there are people who were part of the nation of Israel, and things wasn't going too good for them. They said, hey, we need to go back and make a pact with the Greeks because we want things to go well with us. And again, these are people that were part of Israel. Now, this is not what caused this revolt, but this is what happened. Okay. "And the saying was good in their eyes. And certain of the people were for it herein, and went to the king, and he gave them license to do after the ordinances of the Gentiles." So they went to the king and say, hey, we want to serve your gods. We want to serve like you serving. We want favor. "And they built a place to exercise in Jerusalem according to the laws of the Gentiles. And they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the Gentiles and sold themselves to do evil." Now we're going to skip down to verse 37. "And they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled the sanctuary. And the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. And she became a habitation of strangers, and she became strange to those who were born in her, and her children forsook her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. According to her glory, so was her dishonor multiplied, and her high estate was turned into mourning. And King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom." Now, mind you, this is to the entire kingdom. And we said a kingdom is what? I'm sorry? It's multiple countries, right? So this was really almost the entire world. Okay? "And the king Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and that each should forsake his own laws, and all the nations agreed according to the word of the king." So whatever your religious persuasion was, whatever you worshiped, there's going to be one king. There's going to be one God. There's going to be one faith. There's going to be one religion. So you have to forsake all of what you believe. Are you following me? "And many of Israel consented to his worship, and sacrificed to the idols, and profaned the Sabbath. And the king sent letters by the hand of messengers to Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow laws strange to the land, and should forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the sanctuary, and should profane the Sabbaths and the feasts, and pollute the sanctuary and those who were holy, that they should build altars and temples and shrines for idols, and should sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, and that they should leave their sons uncircumcised, that they should make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. Listen, you know, it was a law that go back to the original real quick. Do you know that it was a law that all males had to be circumcised? All males have to be circumcised. No, the video's not showing. Okay. So what happened if the males were not circumcised? Hey, they were cut off. There was no, well, you see what happened, God, is they said they're going to kill us. I want you to think about that. What is so important about the males being circumcised during this period?
One, it was a part of being in agreement with the covenant. It was a part of the covenant. It was part of their being Jew.
So you were cut off. Now I want you to think about this. You were going to be physically killed or spiritually killed. Now, to most people, you know, because there were a lot of people that were in Israel, you know what they said? Let me be spiritually killed. Save my neck. I love breathing. And so they said, I'm going to go against the covenant because I want to live. And, you know, I'm not saying it makes sense. And a lot of us are like, man, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah, you say that right now. But let your brother standing right next to you and your sister standing right next to you get their neck slit or get hung. It'll cause you to change your mind. Right? So they did all these things. And that they should leave their sons uncircumcised, that they should make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. To make your soul abominable. How do you live with yourself? To know that your soul is done for. When you leave, that's it. Eternal hellfire. So that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever, I want you to listen to this part. Now you have a son. All you women who have children, you know that your son is supposed to be circumcised. Now I'm saying at this time. You know this. But this is what happened when you said, I'm not going to do that. And whosoever shall not do according to the word of the king, he shall die. According to all these words wrote he to his whole kingdom, and he appointed overseers over all the people. And he commanded the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. And from the people were gathered together to them many, every one that had forsaken the law, and they did evil things in the land. And they made Israel to hide themselves in every place, to refuge which they had. And on the 15th day of Kislev, in the 145 years, they built an abomination of desolation upon the altar. And in the cities of Judah, on every side, they built idol altars. And at the doors of the houses, and in the streets, they burned incenses. And they tore in pieces the books of the law which they found, and set them on fire. And wherever was found with any a book of the covenant, and if any consented to the law, the king's sentence delivered him to death. So if, you know, the Bible says that his words are spirit and they life. How are you going to remember the covenants? How are you going to study the word? The Bible tells us that even Christ stood up to read. So how are you going to pass this down from generation to generation if you don't read it? So if you are found with the book of the law, they've taken a book they burning it, they killing you. If you allow your son to be circumcised, well, I'm going to read that part here. Okay. Thus did they in their might to Israel, to those that were found month by month in the cities, a month to month. They set people up to watch everybody. And on the 25th day of the month, they sacrificed upon the idol altar of El. And the women that had circumcised their children, they put to death according to the commandment. And they hanged their babies about their necks and destroyed their houses and those who had circumcised them. So they say, I'm killing the mama for allowing it. We killing the baby. And whoever circumcised, we killing them. And many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed to themselves not to eat unclean things. Some people said, forget that. You're not going to force me to eat nothing unclean. And they chose to die, that they might not be defiled with the meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant, and they died. And there came exceedingly great wrath upon Israel. Now, let me say this before we go on to the lesson. When you think about this empire that existed, and we think about the children of Israel being in the empire, guess who was there in that empire? The ancestors of the apostles, the ancestors of Christ. You know, he had to come through a holy lineage. Just think about this. Do you know everyone that was part of the lineage of Christ had to be circumcised? Now, part of his holy lineage was there. And so if Yah would not have stepped in, Christ couldn't come. If the books of the law were destroyed, I'm going to say it this way so you can get it in all the world. If all the books were burned and destroyed, we would have no record of the Bible. If we don't have record of the Bible, how do we know how to keep the covenants? If Yisrael didn't come out of that, and we're going to read about that today. The Bible says in the book of Genesis, the 28th chapter, it says, in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Do you know that the families of the earth could not be blessed if the children of Yisrael was kept in captivity? Oh, they would have been killed off. Because, see, two things happened. There were some cowards, well, there were a lot of cowards in Israel that agreed to do these ungodly things so that they can live. So they already accounted for. But the ones that was going to stand for Yah, they were going to be killed. They were going to be cut off from the covenant of promise. And so there arose some men who were priests and prophets. And you know what they said we're going to do? They said we're going to fight. Because if we don't fight, all of what I just told you will be lost. That the world cannot be blessed. Furthermore, I think it's important for us to understand, what did they do at the altar?
They sacrificed unclean animals.
They sacrificed unclean animals. They were in Bethel, which is the house of God and the gate of heaven. That altar was holy. The gate, the Bible says that Christ is the high priest over the house of God forever. Well, guess what you did? There was a breach the gate had been removed. And they understood that there is no connection between earth and heaven. There is no connection with the Father unless we get the altar back. Now listen, you can't run because this was done in all over the kingdom. It says overseers over everyone. And so you better fight, because if you go try to hide, if you try to go into a foreign, when I say foreign, I mean a faraway place, they're going to find you. So why run? We are going to fight for the generations to come. Do you have that same type of motivation and the same type of resolve that you got to fight for the generations to come? Now, although we may not be facing physical persecution today, some people come here like, oh, no, hey, shalom. Hey, shalom. No, you should be coming here to fight for the generations that are to come. To make sure that this thing is established. And that there are processes in place, and there is growth, and there is spiritual learning. That your kids are getting this so that they can carry it on to the next generation. Don't let your kids sit around and play all day. You don't come here to play. Don't you come here just to socialize. This is not a social club. But we have a responsibility like Judas Maccabees and his brothers, to make sure that this thing is preserved. Why did y'all fight like that? Let's kumbaya. Oh, I'm going to show you a Hebrew kumbaya. Because we going to fight. We don't compromise. We don't compromise the doctrine. There were cowards that were among Israel that compromised. And so we fight. Now, the story alone should be enough for you to understand why this should be celebrated from year to year. This wasn't just some little war, some little fight in a city. The word of El was about to be destroyed. The holy lineage was about to be destroyed. The gate of heaven was destroyed. And they had to restore the gate of heaven. We watch all these, what do you call them? I can't remember the names of the different Marvels. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's two different groups, and I don't get the two different Marvel and DC, whatever. But we watch these movies, and you ever watched a movie where people were trying to get to the portal? They were trying to go back to their world. They were trying to go back to another world. Now, you're all too young. I'm going to say something older that wasn't DC. Back to the Future. But the portal can be destroyed. Now, if there's a portal, I want you to think spiritually. You sit here now because we don't have that fight. But if you went up and you can actually see a physical portal, whether you're looking straight or whether you're looking up from the altar, if you can see the portal and you can see the silhouette of Christ, where you can't really see, but you can see. And every day you come in here and you see that opening, that portal, how would you fight? Would you fight to keep that portal open? When somebody is trying to bring in a false doctrine, which can cause the portal to close, would you fight? So we must have that same attitude today. I know most people in here don't. I know most people just come here as part of a tradition or part of, but that's between you and Yah. I know what I'm going to do. And so that's what these guys did that fought for us. This is why we celebrate, because Yah was with them. Yah inspired them. In fact, it was Yah who saved the nation through them. Oh, we don't do this by ourselves. We don't exalt and say, look at what I did. They understood something that most people don't understand. They understood the Bible. They understood that Yah made a covenant with their forefathers. Now, they didn't know what was going to happen, but they knew what was going to happen if they didn't fight. There was a group of 1,000, and I'm going to shut my mouth so we can go to this lesson. But there was a group of 1,000 that had their own understanding of what it meant to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And the Bible in the book of Maccabees tells us that these men, women, and children ran off into the wilderness. They said, we're not going to participate in this foolishness that the heathens are trying to get us to do. And so they ran and they hid in the wilderness. And the pagans, these generals, they found out. And they went on down to that wilderness and said, you all come on out of that cave. They said, we're not coming out and partaking in your sin. And they said, if you don't come out, we coming in. And those men in there said, we not coming out and we not going to fight. And if you kill us, our blood is going to testify against you. They said, man, we don't care nothing about your saying and your blood testifying. And they killed 1,000 men, women, and children. Because they said, we're going to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Now, Judas and his brothers, the priests and prophets, said, we're not going to do that. Because we already saw what they've done to our people. And if we take the same action, they're going to do the same thing for us. We're going to pick up a brick. We're going to pick up a stick. We're going to pick up something. For Yah I live and for Yah I die. And they had to get a revelation to tell the other people we're going to fight. I think that's deep. That they wanted to keep the Sabbath so holy that they said, we're not going to fight on the Sabbath. And they didn't do it. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. Did you have something before you go on with the lesson? Brother Alonzo, yes, sir. Is there another one? The wireless. You got one right next to you. You got one right next to you. I don't know if I turned that one up. It's on.
Toda, I just want to confirm that the group of the 1,000 who chose not to fight on the Sabbath, up until the revelation that the Maccabees had, there was nothing wrong in not fighting on the Shabbat. Like they didn't make a mistake by not fighting.
No,
it was just they chose to remember the Shabbat the way that it was originally intended. You know, they didn't have that revelation yet to fight on the Shabbat.
Sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, there was nothing. They just
they didn't do nothing wrong.
No, they just said we keeping it holy.
Right. Okay.
We so righteous and we so holy. We want to be right with Yah. Right. You know, in the 21st century, we justify doing certain things. I'm talking about in here, but I it's not for me to question your love, your commitment to Yah's word. But they said we 100% in. We 100%. When that shofar blow, we here to hear the shofar blow. We not like we are today, and folks trickle in 30 minutes, 20 minutes. Like the commitment was there with everything they did. So no, there was nothing wrong with what they did. They just Said we're not going to break. Same way people said we're not going to eat swine flesh. We're not going to eat those unholy things you trying to get us to eat. And they got killed for it. So no.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Toda.
Anybody else?
My next question
Yep.
is regarding verse 15, the first chapter of the first book of Maccabees. It says, and they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the Gentiles and sold themselves to do evil. You cut off the foreskin. You can't like make yourself uncircumcised by like putting it back on or nothing. So this is just saying that they like forsook Yah's commandments and just disobeyed what Yah said.
Sure.
So in like their heart, they were uncircumcised.
Yeah, the outer skin removal was supposed to be an outward sign.
Right.
Which, I mean, you're not sitting around showing the outward sign, but it was the outward sign of what was supposed to be in your heart.
Right.
So many folks were circumcised in the flesh, but they were uncircumcised in their heart.
Okay. And that'll be displayed by your actions. Of
Absolutely.
course, what you doing. Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Toda.
Okay. All right. I know we're not going to finish the lesson, but we're going to go to our slides. I'm sorry.
Kane, hold on. So I just, for Brother Alonzo, going off of what you said about how, they weren't wrong for not fighting on the Shabbat, but what happened was like Matthias was thinking if we did the same as our brethren, then we would be no more. So they had foresight to say, hey, we're going to make this decree that we will fight because we have to preserve our people, and if we don't fight. So that's what he meant by like we're gonna fight. Versus they weren't wrong, but they decided, hey, we're not gonna, this and Cain.
I don't even know if the Maccabee brothers would have even spent the time to think about, evaluate the law, and make this decision and have this revelation if it weren't for the fact that this had already happened where the people were dying as a result of not fighting on the Shabbat. So now they have data of like, well, this is the end result that Yisrael will be no more if we don't fight. And so they had that information now, and they could then evaluate that and make a judgment as priests, as prophets, based off of what happened. Now they have this information.
What, the camera? All right. I don't think the internet went off. Okay, well. All right, if it's just frozen, they'll just get the audio. Is the PowerPoint still up? All right, I just want to make sure you still can hear me. You can? Okay. All right, so all right, give us 1 second. I think we had some issue. Yeah, if you can still do the PowerPoint. I'll never access the camera. Let me do this real quick. I'm not sure what happened to. Did you unplug?
I don't see what's
You
unplugged.
plugged the phone in?
I was trying to plug this in.
Oh.
I don't see what's unplugged.
Can you? Okay, give us 1 quick second. Which one is? Where's the? Somebody plug it in the back here?
I don't think so.
Did anybody lean back here and plug something up? All right, so I'm not sure. I'm just make sure. Hopefully, we don't lose. Yeah, be careful of plugging anything up there. Where did you plug up? Where did you plug up at?
I was going to plug it right there.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna just keep going without the camera. So, but you still can hear me, right? Yeah. All right. Let's see if I can do this. We're gonna try to reload. I don't know if it's gonna. Okay. All right. Well, you guys just can't see me. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm sorry, guys. Our camera, something happened with the camera. So You guys will just see the PowerPoint for the rest of the class. All right, so let's go ahead and read real quick. How is the Chanukah celebration justified as an eternal commandment once a year from Passover? Okay, one of the things I think that is important is that we have to justify, and again, for a lot of people who do believe in the feast days and don't accept the Feast of Chanukah, we have to be able to show or justify it. And so we're going to read this. How does Chanukah celebration, how is that justified as an eternal commandment once a year from Passover? We're going to get the precedent. We read last week that there was a common law. There was a common law that caused the Maccabees to make this edict or this law that we must keep Chanukah from year to year. So let's go. Can I get a reader?
Cain. Passover and Chanukah have certain things in common. These commonalities justify why Chanukah is celebrated forever by Yisrael, Israel. The congregation was led by both the prophets and the priests, according to 1 Maccabees 4:56 and 59, and Amos 3 and 7. The Passover feast is a memorial of deliverance from the pagans. This deliverance was necessary so that Yisrael could be free to worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Because of their captivity, they could not do all the will of El, God, in Egypt. This deliverance caused El to institute an eternal feast, celebrating him delivering Yisrael from the pagans. Yisrael was under the pagan Greeks again, which defiled the altar and the sanctuary, preventing them from worshiping God. This act also caused a breach in the house of El, God, destroying the connection between heaven and earth.
Okay. Can somebody summarize what we just read?
Basically, both in Passover and Chanukah, the nation of Israel was under the threat of annihilation. They either could not worship El the way that they needed to, and they were facing that threat under Egypt, or in the case of Chanukah, they were under the threat from the Greeks. Same thing, not being able to worship El, being forced to defile themselves, and destroying of the temple, and disconnecting us from the gate of heaven. So in both cases, we were facing annihilation, either spiritually or physically or both, but we were delivered. And so that's why we have these feast days, these celebrations, to celebrate the deliverance from.
Now,
Annihilation.
yes. Now, so remember, there are only a few times in the history of the world where the entire nation was going to be destroyed. It's only 3 times. And those 3 times were what?
Passover, Purim, and Chanukah.
And so not only, these are special memorials. What is the characteristics that are unique with each of these memorials? Anybody?
I think, as our sister Ronnie just said, all of Israel was going to be destroyed, but also the connection between heaven and earth, it would cease to exist if the pagans had their way. It would all be destroyed.
What type of memorial is this?
A deliverance.
It's a deliverance memorial. Now, we have a lot of different memorials. The 7-day Sabbath memorializes what? It's creation. We can go down the list of the feast days. Right? But these 3, the entire nation was going to be destroyed. And when we think about that, I want us to remember 3 significant things. Number one, I think one of the greatest things that we can learn from these deliverances is that Christ would not have come. They could not serve God in spirit and truth in captivity in Egypt. There was a covenant, and I quoted it earlier in Genesis the 28th chapter, and it's reiterated in the New Testament where it says to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. There was a covenant in the mind of Yah before he even had a people that he was going to create. I think Deuteronomy 28:19 that, or 28:9, he was going to get a holy nation, and his holy nation was going to be his mouthpiece. That these holy people were going to be his witnesses. He said in Isaiah the 43rd chapter, ye are my witnesses. He said that I'm going to give you the information. Don't you know that you're going to judge the world? Now, you're not going to be the final judge. But you're going to judge the world because he's going to give you his judgments. You are going to tell the world that they are wrong because you are going to know how to evaluate what's right and what's wrong. He said that he's going to reveal the secrets to his people so that we may do all the words of the law. And he understood this. So every time you think about the nation being destroyed, guess what? Yah had to understand that I made a covenant. I'm not a God that lies. I made a covenant with a people. I made a covenant that they were going to bless the entire world. I made a covenant that they were going to judge the world. So at some point, I'm motivated by the covenant that I made. And so he's going to have to inspire you. He's going to have to give you answers of how to deliver his people. And this should make sense to us. But we have to convey this message to the world. Let's look at the commandment to teach and pass down Yah mighty acts. If I can get another reader. Again, we do apologize. Our camera, something happened. Oh, we didn't? Oh, okay.
By successfully establishing Greek culture and defiling the temple, Yisrael had to fight for their deliverance, and El had to deliver them again, like he did in the Red Sea, as part of the Passover, according to 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter. This is the justification of Chanukah, as the Feast of Passover gave us a pattern or model. Now we know why the prophets and the priests with the entire congregation agreed to celebrate this feast. This also explains why Yahshua, Jesus, kept the feast as our perfect example of keeping the law according to Matthew the 5th chapter, verse 17, John and 1 Peter.
Okay. So this is the justification of Chanukah. There was a precedent. We keep using this word precedent. We keep using this phrase, there was a common law from the book of Maccabees. The Bible said that the Maccabees decreed this feast that they're going to give. They decreed it. And they made mention of a common law. So they're already telling you they went back in the past. They went back in the law. And there's a justification of this feast found in the law. Okay? Our commandment to teach and to pass down the Father's mighty acts. If I can get a reader, we're going to go to our next slide. The commandment to teach and pass down Yah's mighty acts.
One of the distinct characteristics of Yisrael is to make sure that the people of the world who are seeking the kingdom of El come to know the understanding the Father and Son by teaching about his ways and passing down the stories of his mighty acts. Not only do we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the testimony of the saints, but we gain faith and courage by the stories that are written in the Word.
This is pretty tough for the world to accept. And I understand why. So don't act surprised and say, well, God gave us his holy word and we're supposed to passage. Yeah, you can read Genesis 28:14, where he says the whole world's going to be blessed by the children of Israel. But look at all the religions today. Look at all the denominations. How are you going to convince somebody that the Father is giving you his divine message to give to the entire world? How are you going to convince folks that are in other faiths and people that are maybe your mother or people that may be your friends that you got something that they need? And so it's first and foremost, it's up to us to live a life of holiness. Because if you live in a wretched life, you can't tell me nothing. If your website look like trash, you think I'm about to put my credit card on there? I don't care how good you say your product is. It tells me something about your company or your organization. And so we got to live a life of righteousness or holiness, number one. Number two, we got to study. I'm not going to ask folks to raise their hand. I didn't even ask you to pull your papers out. But I say, how many people meditated for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes last week over the lesson? 15 minutes. If you give me something, when I'm in school, I don't necessarily go back and read over in everything, but if you can just take some time to think about what you talked about, it'll make what we talked about sink in. And so we have that obligation to the world. Let's look at what these two Bible verses said in 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter. And then we're going to read Psalms, the 78th chapter, verse 5. We have to be able to communicate that our job is to give you what you need for salvation. People say, you're not God. Well, I didn't say I was God, but neither is your pastor. But you listen to him. But let's look at what these two Bible verses said. Let's read. Can I get a reader to read 1 Maccabees, the 4th chapter, verse 8 through 11?
Don't worry about the size of their army, and don't be frightened when they attack. Remember how our ancestors were saved at the Red Sea when the king of Egypt was pursuing them with his army. Now let us ask Jehovah to have mercy on us. Let us pray that he will honor his covenant with our ancestors and crush this army when we attack today. Then all the Gentiles will know that Yisrael, or Israel, has a God who rescues and saves them.
Now, listen. He didn't tell these men or women or whoever was fighting. He didn't say, I want you to look at how sharp your arrow is. Oh, look at Johnny and all his brothers. Look how big their muscles are. Did he point to any physical attributes to encourage them? But this is what he said. Listen, there is power. We read the Bible like we read any other book. We read it and we say, oh man, that was interesting. But do we really internalize? Do we really accept the word and believe that just what Yah did back then, he'll do it again today? Now he says, remember our ancestors. Don't look at our army. Don't look at, remember our ancestors. So you're going to encourage me. These folks are chucking spears through folks' necks. And you telling me to remember our ancestors. He says, remember how our ancestors were saved at the Red Sea when the king of Egypt was pursuing them with his army. They understood that Yah has to honor his covenants. And that Yah said that Yisrael means to have power with man and God and to prevail. Now, some of them said something that most of us wouldn't say. In fact, Mordecai in the story of Purim did the same thing. What did Mordecai tell Queen Esther? He says, maybe, just maybe, You were brought here. You were set up in this position for times such as this. But if you don't do it, oh, he gonna raise somebody up. Now, he didn't say that Yah is gonna remember his covenant, but that is what he was saying. That Yah is gonna remember his covenants. He is not an El that he should lie, and you can count on him. Let's look at Psalm 78, chapter verse 5 through 8.
For he established a testament in Jacob.
Testimony.
A testimony in Jacob.
Who is he? He established it. So the testimony that Jacob had didn't come from Jacob. Now, Jacob said it, but it was inspired. The Maccabees did it, but they were inspired. They said things pertaining to us fighting on the Sabbath. They were inspired. And you today, if you just meditate on his word and you pray, like, you can be inspired to do things that will propel this movement and this doctrine throughout the entire world. Now, you may not say, and you may not know, well, you know what? When I was asleep last night about 2 o'clock in the morning, God spoke to me. Now, if I didn't hear a Hebrew language with my own ears, I can't tell you that Yah spoke to me. If I had a dream, if I make a decision, I can't tell you that Yah spoke to me, but Yah can speak to you that way. He established a testimony in Jacob. And
appointed a law in Yisrael, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children.
Hold on. So what he did, is that just for you? No. Now, I think some people got an attitude that it's just for them. There are some people that are satisfied, say, I got it. I got it. I'm going to get into the kingdom. I got it. And you better be careful, because just because you have it, Yah can say, depart from me. There are other people that I wanted to get, but you didn't want to give it to them. You didn't want to do your part. But he says what you have, that you should make them known to your children.
That the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in El, and not forget the works of El, but keep his commandments.
Now, what does that word "that" means? For this reason. So he established a testimony in Jacob, and he appointed the law in Israel. This is the reason why he did it. Not for you to say, I'm going to make it to the kingdom because I got it. No, you're supposed to do something with it. When you run a race and you got a baton, you know why you got that baton? You better pass it on. You can't just keep running with the baton. You disqualified. You lost the race. You might have made it to the end. Matter of fact, you might have kept the baton and beat everybody. You lost the race. Because if you don't know anything about track and field, they got markers. And you got to hand off that baton between this marker and that marker. Didn't know that, huh? Oh, yeah, that's how people get disqualified, because there are markers. You can't give it to them before, you can't give it to them after. But why am I giving it to my children? So they can be saved only? No, that what? That the generations to come might know them. You know, generations are still coming. Even the children which should be born. So these are people who haven't even come yet, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in El. We have a problem today with our children Matter of fact, we got a problem today with a lot of our adults. That somebody didn't pass something down to them. And they don't have hope because in this world, we're going to go through some trials and tribulations. I'm not jumping out of no window, taking my life. I'm not taking my life. Because when things are not going all like I feel they should, I set my hope in something that's greater than me. Now, personally, I've never met the Father in person. But I set my hope through the Word. I can read what He did in the past. And I can read about the promises that He said He would do in the future. And so when you're going through that dark period, that's where you need to set your hope. That's where your faith needs to be. That they might set their hope in El and not forget the works of El. Why do we keep these feast days? So we can remember the works that God did. That we can remember Him delivering our people. And now you apply this to your personal life. You might not be fighting no Gentiles. You might not be fighting for your life. But if He can deliver an entire nation from mass genocide, your little problem you got is mere crumbs to Him. So you should set your hope in Him. And we talk about the hope through these feast days. And we talk about the deliverance through these feast days. But keep His commandments. Verse 8.
And might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with El.
Now, you all got some uncles and some friends and some people in your life that was stubborn. And they was rebellious. And y'all said, I don't want you to take on that nature. Because they lost hope. They didn't have faith. They turned to drugs, and they turned to alcohol, and they turned to their friends. And they leaned on their own understanding. But the Bible didn't tell you to lean on your own understanding. It says, trust in Jehovah with all your heart. And lean not into your own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge Him. Hey, that's the way we are made, and He shall direct your paths. You make wrong decisions because you get emotional. Oh, I've been having this conversation a lot the last 2 weeks. Stop getting emotional. Because when you get emotional, you're going to make emotional, wrong decisions. Hey, what's right? What did the Word say? And so the commandment to teach and pass down is commandment. It's a commandment for you young folks. Don't just come because you got to come now, and then when you get grown and get a little money in your pocket, you know, it's all about you now. It's not about Yah. So it's our responsibility to cause you to hear, to cause you to learn, so that you can continue to pass this down. This is how the nation becomes a great nation. Because you got to get something in you. And at some point, you're going to stand on your own. You're going to have to make your own decisions. You're going to have your own problems and your own challenges. You're going to get your own thorn in your side. I'm not getting the thorn for you. How you going to deal with those things? Amen. Come on, let's move on. Again, we apologize to those that are online. Our camera went out, so you guys are just going to see the PowerPoint for the remainder of the class. We just have a few more, a little bit more ways to go. Psalms, the 77th chapter. It says, I will remember the works of the Yehovah. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. Now, I got memories. I got childhood memories. And there's a lot of memories that we carry that don't amount up to nothing. It means nothing today. But why do we say we remember his works? Why are we remembering his works? Why are we remembering your wonders of old?
You asking us?
Yeah.
Well, I think we just read it. His works and his wonders of old gives us faith and courage to continue on, and we know that if he did it before, he can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not, I say it because I live it, and I know it's hard to, with all of the what's going on in the world, that we have to really read and understand that these are the words of life. That these words that we read is not just letters, English letters on a white piece of paper. But if you read them and you accept them, they give life. The Bible said that we will be able to do those things that are impossible to the world will be possible to us. Do you know that makes you the head and not the tail? What's going to separate you? We congratulate our Dr. Tate for passing her board and being a certified, I couldn't say all you said, certified, board certified OBGYN. Did I say it right? That's it. Ah! But she can't say I'm Yisrael. She had to do her part. She had to get faith. There were days where it was tough, that she had to be encouraged. You got to study. You got to ask Yah for strength. I got about 7 good minutes in me before I start walking around and turning the TV. Ooh, I'm gonna have to fast. If I did, you say it's true, right? But you got to do your part, and once you do your part, and Yah is with you in doing your part. But once you get to a certain level, now he's going to take that gift, he's going to take that skill, and he's going to make you high above. Oh, I believe in what the words say, that we are going to be above all people. But you got to do your part. You got to put yourself in a position for Yah to use you. Some people read the Bible and say, I believe, I believe, I believe. The Bible says faith without works is dead. Your belief is dead. Because you are believing without works. The works are done throughout the Bible. And we visit these stories every year so that we can remember the works. And Christ himself went up and kept this feast. They were trying to kill him. If there are some folks at my job trying to kill me, you think I'm going to work Monday? Absolutely not. I got a lot of vacation days, so I could take my vacation and sick days. Hey, but guess what? If them vacation and sick days run out, and they say you're not getting paid unless you come, man, I don't know if I got to go through the chimney or do something. You know, my mom and daddy from Mississippi. But I have to find a way to get paid. So when Christ went up and kept this feast because he had to be there. Because the Bible said that he had to be there. The law said he had to be there. The priests that existed during that time said that he had to be there because this was a feast for all the Jews. Now, you can miss me with that cockamamie story that this was a civil holiday. Well, yeah, I mean, it's for all the Jews. So Christ allowing folks to put their civil holidays in the book. Let's look at our next slide. We're going to read Exodus, the 20th chapter, verse 24 through 25. And we just got a little bit more to do. Again, our video feed has went out. And so I heard I had the face for radio anyway. Let's go. Exodus, the 2nd chapter, verse 24 through 25.
They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to El. El heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
What caused God to hear?
He heard their groaning.
He heard their groanings.
And
but what did the groanings do?
Caused him to remember his promise, his covenant.
You know, he made individual covenant promises with you. With you. With all of his children. So what should you do when you going through? Hey, remind him. You know that Hezekiah was set to die, right? Get your house in order. You about to leave up out of here. And what did Hezekiah do? He cried out. But what did he do when he cried out? Oh, he reminded God. Do you know that when you keeping the Sabbath holy, do you know when you living right? When you doing all the things that God asks you to do, that you can remind him of what you've done? That you can remind him of the promises, the covenants of promise that he said he would give to you? That has to be according to his will. But you should cry out. El heard their groanings, and he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then what did the Bible say, verse 25?
He looked down on the people of Israel and knew it was time to act.
At some point, I want you to think about Passover. Think about it. They were leaving out of the land of Egypt. And as they got through the Red Sea, boy, they heard them chariots coming. And they heard all these men coming. And El was going to do his work, but they cried out to Yah. The entire nation, 600 some odd thousand people came out of the land of Egypt. Now, I don't know what Pharaoh was going to do. I don't know if Pharaoh was going to try to kill him. I don't know if anger rose up in him because he lost his firstborn. If he was going to bring them back into captivity where they could not worship Yah. I want you to think about it. You think that Pharaoh get two hoots about them keeping the Sabbath day holy? Whip on your back. Get back to work. Do you think he cared anything about the dietary law? They were heathens. And then when we look at the Feast of Purim, all the Jews are going to die in one day. You think about the Feast of Chanukah, that no male can be circumcised. Every time I read this story, it just, you got to be circumcised. I won't even dare ask you mothers who got kids today that if there's a requirement to be circumcised on the 8th day, and you said, well, I love Yah and I want my child to be part of Yah's covenant. And then there was a law passed that if you circumcise your child, we're going to hang your child from a rope, kill him. We killing you. We killing your uncle who circumcised him. Is that a dilemma to have? Well, you know what? We look at movies and we say it's a dilemma, but because you ain't seen nobody be, to see something like that. I mean, for you to imagine it is one thing, but for you to see it, I never seen. Listen, I used to eat all type of meats. I never saw an animal slaughtered or sacrificed. Saw it one time, became a vegetarian. Vegan, vegetarian. I didn't eat. Ooh, I saw it one time. And then, you know what? A light popped on in my head. And I said, I'm eating an animal. Now, you may call it meat. I said, that's an animal. That's just like Fluffy or whatever dog. That's an animal. But it took me to see that one time. And so this is why they were doing the public display. And they were hanging the babies. And they were killing folks. Because if you see it, it'll change your mind. All right, let's go ahead and read our passage over here to the left. I mean, to the right, I'm sorry.
This passage explains that while El was aware of the Israelites' suffering in Egypt, what ultimately motivated him to intervene and deliver them was his remembrance of the covenant he made with their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, promising to multiply their descendants and give them the land of Canaan, essentially highlighting that El's faithfulness to his promises, as exemplified by the story of the Exodus, is a key theme also reflected in the celebration of Chanukah.
Now, I think about this real quick. Think about this. And this makes all the sense in the world. What makes you love your child? Or let me say it this way. What makes Yah love you individually? I'm going to ask you that individually. What makes Yah love you? I want somebody to answer that question. I want you to think about it. What makes Yah love you? You don't know why Yah loves you? Anybody? You had your hand up?
I believe for reasons same as this. He created me.
He created Jeffrey Dahmer.
For a purpose.
Hey, he created Jeffrey Dahmer for a purpose.
For his.
I'll say.
He created Jacob and Esau. He said, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. What makes...
Why did he say that Esau have I hated?
Huh?
Why did he say Jacob I love, Esau I've hated?
He know
Because
Esau.
of his heart. Okay. Got it.
What makes God love you? I want you to think about you. Well, let me say this. I'm not talking about divine selection. Because there are people who, well, I'm going to say people, he chose his nation already. You know, he may have chosen you, but not chose your brother. He may chose your father, but not chose your uncle. I'm not talking about divine selection. What makes God love you?
I hesitate to answer because I feel like you asking tricky questions.
All right,
But-
that's not a tricky question. No,
how
I
about-
think
how
I think
about
that
this?
you thinking. I think you trying to beat the trick that I don't have. So you overthinking it.
I am very much so overthinking it, but just based on what you said, okay, not only am I his creation, okay, we got that part. He created Jeffrey Dahmer, but that I in my heart have sought to keep the commandments and the covenants. So I am actively serving Yah and doing his will and his works and what he's telling me to do. And so part of the answer might have to do with he's already made a promise to love me.
Why did he make a promise to love you?
Because I have
Leon.
Is there just no reason? Like, is this a trick question?
No, it's not a trick question.
Oh,
okay, how about
What you got, Frank?
in
Hold on.
Because he wants us to see him come with him when we die. I don't know.
the purpose that we have is to
I said,
bless
why
all
does he
the
love you?
families of the earth and
Okay, so let go ahead. I'm gonna give you one more shot.
does he love us because he wants to see if we would love him back?
I mean, you kind of in there. You kind of in there. It's really a simple answer. You said you love him. You said you keep his commandments. If you love him and keep his commandments, then what is his obligation to you?
it's the
So he's gonna make a covenant with you, right?
right.
The lesson is about the covenant. So the only thing that, and this may sound kind of weird and strange, the only reason why Yah will love you and bring you or allow you to be in his kingdom forever is because he made a covenant. It's only the covenant that ties us with Yah. We made a promise and a commitment to him. He's reciprocating that. We're keeping his law, statutes, and judgments. He's made a covenant to Yisrael. If you wasn't Yisrael, does God love you? Y'all scared to answer that question.
Yes.
He says if you... huh?
Oh.
He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Who's going to keep his commandments? Right. So if his people, Yisrael, is going to keep his commandments, you loving him, you're expressing your love by keeping his commandments. Right? He's going to reciprocate that to you. So don't say he loved me because I'm fine. Oh, he loved me because, no, he loved you because there is a contract. There is a covenant. It's the covenant that makes him love you. That you're keeping his covenants. And as a result of keeping the covenant, he said, then there's something I'm going to do for you. I'm going to save you. I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to be there when you call. But it's all conditional. Dr. Tate.
I was going to just read a Bible verse that we all know and have heard a million times. John chapter 3, verse 16. I'm just going to read it in English just for us to really hear it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And this says world, but we understand as we read in context that he gave his only begotten Son for those who believe on him. Mm-hmm. And if you believe on him, that means you're going to do what he told you to do. You're going to keep his commandments. So I think that gives us kind of a Bible verse suggesting exactly what you're saying, that he loved us. He loves us because we believe in him and we follow the example that his Son left.
Good.
And so that's the reason why El loves us and then does all these things.
Now watch this. Don't make me fall off my chair. Go ahead. I'm going to let you say what you're going to say.
I was just going to say, I think, we we have to rethink how we define love. It's not really a noun like this is why,
Absolutely.
but it's more so a verb,
Absolutely.
a two-way street of actions. This for that. I'm doing this, and this is gonna please Yah, and He may find it in His will to bless me or to give me favor. So it's a two-way street. And you've highlighted on this plenty of times, Elder Al, how words or even actions without the right intent, it doesn't necessarily mean you love somebody or you doing it for that reason. So you gotta really be about it. You gotta really be in your
Yeah,
heart.
absolutely. Now, I'm gonna stand up and ask this question. My question is, does God love the world? We read John 3:16. Does God love the world? Is it yes or no? That's why I asked the question. Who said yes? You say He loved the world? Read John 3:16 again. Dr. Tate, or whoever got it. You can just quote it. You said God loved the world, right? Hold on. So you said yes?
Yes. So
Read it again, Dr. Tate. Listen.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
You want to keep your answer? You said yes?
yes.
Okay, why you say yes?
Cause like John 3:16, if he don't like yes, cause like I'm trying to think. Like he loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten son. Isn't that what John 3:16?
That is what it say.
Right. So then,
No,
yeah.
brother, think through. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, that was it.
That was your answer?
That was the premise of my answer.
All right, I won't.
Yeah.
Frank, are you saying yes because he said yes?
I was saying,
Huh?
yes because of the verse. But if you saying no, because
I didn't say no. I don't say because I said no. I just asked the question.
does it have anything to do with the word love?
No.
Does that have anything? I would say yes.
Now I want you to think, and I'm using them. I know you. I'm using you because I want you to think through this. For God so loved the world. You got that right. He did something because he loved the world. That he gave his only begotten Son. What does the next part say? That
whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life.
Yeah. Does everybody in the world believe in him?
No.
But you told me he loved the world.
Yeah. Yes. Because
He loved the world even though the world don't love and believe in him.
Yes.
Is everybody going to be saved?
No.
Is everybody going to heaven?
No.
No, but you just said he loved the world. So if he loved the entire world, how come everybody not going to heaven?
Because love is an action.
Okay, you say the answer, but you don't know you saying it. Go ahead. Well, whoever. I mean, who had their hand up first?
I was saying that Yah doesn't love the world. He said that the action that he took because he loved the world was giving his only begotten Son so that the ones who did believe in him could be saved and have everlasting life. So I feel like, no, he does not love the world because he's saying that those who believe in him, and that not everybody believes in him, so not everybody can be saved. Because
Okay. You had something?
Cain. So my answer was no, because there is a if and then. So if they believed in him, not everyone believes.
Okay. Okay. All right, Brother Alonzo.
Just gonna say, yeah, the answer is no. But we sort of mentioned earlier that when we see the word that it indicates for this reason, because of this. So if you read it that way, it'll read something like, "For El so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, because of this reason, whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So if you connect the two, then it would make more sense why he can't love the whole world unless this condition is met.
Okay.
In which part you wouldn't be a part of the world no more. You'd
So,
be Israel.
so your answer, you are answering the question, and you're not finishing the thought. I'll say it this way, and maybe somebody have an easier way to say it. The only thing that he loves about the world is that his people that believe in him are here. It says that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish. Well, everybody else is going to perish, but have everlasting life. Right? So there are people that are not going to perish, and they're going to have everlasting life. There are a bunch of other people that will perish and not have everlasting life, because only his people are going to believe in him. So he doesn't love the world as a whole. What he loves about the world is that his people, there's a segment of people, a fraction of a people that's in this world. He's going to destroy this world. He's going to take his people out. It's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. So when you read that, you can't separate the sections. You stop and because you hear with your ear that God so loved the world. Right? Yeah. I mean, are you still confused? Lost? We can talk about it. Dr. Tate. I mean, does it make sense or it don't make sense?
It do make sense. I just didn't really finish my thought like you said. So it's just like,
Hey man, the sun gonna be down in a couple hours. I don't know how long you want me to give you.
I have an answer from.
All right, go ahead. No, I just kidding with you.
I have an answer to share from the Nashville congregation from our own sister Naomi. She says that the answer that she's sharing is coming from Exodus, the 20th chapter, in verse 6. That's what came to mind. And showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. She says, Yah loves me and us because we choose him, even though he chose us first, and denied ourselves and pleasures of our own to learn of his ways and delight in his way and will.
Man, does that make sense? Does that help? All right. We're just going to finish these key points. You have something to say?
So she said God chose us first, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, it would make sense to me that his love for us doesn't depend on our love for him. That's why I still think like this doesn't make sense why they saying.
Let me say this, and we'll move on. We'll deal with that after this class. But
she had something to say.
Who said it? Oh,
I was going to respond to what you said.
okay. We'll talk about that. But there's something that's called okay. We'll talk about it because we were predestined. Those who he called, he predestined before the foundations of the earth. We'll talk about that. So yeah, we're predestined. You don't know you predestined.
I mean, I think another easy way of saying that is God already knows our heart.
Dr. Tate.
An easy way of saying what he just said that I think can be accessible to understand is that God already knows our heart. So the Bible talks about how the heart is wickedly deceitful and who can know it. But the person who knows our hearts is God. So even before you make an action, he understands and knows if you're ultimately going to use your free will and make the choice to follow him. So when we were talking earlier about Abraham and how righteousness was imputed upon him before he even did anything, that's because he knew that he would follow him. He knew that he would tell his children to follow him. So he can give that love in the form of having his only begotten son come into the world and to sacrifice his life for us, because he already knows what we're going to choose. And so he can extend that love back to us, already knowing the path that we're going to choose. And maybe that route can be a little circuitous, and that perfection includes you making some mistakes and then ultimately getting it right. But he knows your heart.
Yeah. You know what? It helps me to better understand. I don't get into Yah's business. I don't get into his business. Live your life. Do what he's asking you to do. Because here's something that he said. Again, I don't pass judgment because I don't know. So I don't say anything about anything. You know what he said about Esau? No. Yeah, he said more about than he hated him. Bible say he hated him from the womb. Hey, so so when his mama was pregnant, you were like, man, that's unfair. Esau didn't do nothing. Oh, Esau got grown and did something, and y'all already knew Esau's heart. So, people say, what's the sense of even living if everything is already determined and yada yada? We'll talk about that. Let me read these key points, and so we can get out of here. From when we got all off, but let's look at these key points.
God heard the cries of the Israelites.
He heard their cries. Y'all will hear your cries as well. Read.
The passage emphasizes that God was not indifferent to the Israelites' suffering in Egypt, acknowledging their prayers and cries for help.
Hey, no matter how dark things seem, no matter how long you have to wait, Yah wants you to come to him. You say, well, if he know everything else, he know my heart. How come he don't know what I need? Hey, Yah wants you to go through the acts. He wants you to ask. You ever have somebody get mad at you because you didn't give them something? You say, man, why didn't you ask? You never even asked. I would have gave it to you, just ask. But I'm not going to get into your mind. I'm not ill either, but I'm not going to get into your head and try to figure out, well, I didn't know when you were talking about X, Y, and Z that you were short on your route, So you just ask. Next point.
The covenant with Abraham. The crucial factor that prompts God's action was his remembrance of the covenant he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which included promises of a large lineage receiving the land of Canaan and to be their God forever.
So the covenant, something so small as this. He says, if my people which are called by my name. Now you may not have learned how to be Yisrael, but you know what you should get from that? That being called by the name that he gave his sons and daughters, he has an obligation to you. Now don't stop there. Don't keep your ratchet lifestyle and come out of the world and say, I'm called by the name of Yisrael. There it is. Y'all do it for me. You're going to have to humble yourselves and pray. You're going to have to continue on. Being called by the name of Yisrael is the first step. But at least do that part. And while you learning how to become Yisrael, I promise you, I am not the same person being called by the name of Yisrael today as I was when I came here at the age of 23. And so you're going to continue to grow and develop and go through your changes. But have the right heart going through your changes. Don't say, well, I'm just young. I'm Yisrael, but I'm young. I'll stop whatever when I get older. I'll stop when I get married. Hey, that's the wrong attitude. Because y'all can put your candlestick out before you turn it around. Last point.
Chanukah as a reminder. The author connects this biblical narrative to the Feast of Chanukah, suggesting that it serves as a living reminder of God's commitment to his covenant with the ancestors of Yisrael.
Yah made a pact. He made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When you became Yisrael, when you came into his house, they fell. When you called on his Hebrew salvation name, then there is a connection that you now have with Yah. When Yah saved the children of Yisrael from this pagan destruction, these events, and I don't want to get into Yah's head, but these events were prompted. Everything that you see and that you read was given for our learning. It was given so that we could learn how to overcome. That we could put our hope in him. And know that your issues, and I don't want to call your issues little issues, but your life ain't threatening. I used to always say the little smart remark when people say, "Oh, do me a, you can do whatever, you can fire me, you can't kill me. You can repo my car, you can't kill me." So whatever you're going through, it is not total yah. That is not what they went through. I can only imagine what my mindset would be if that was to happen to us, that they looking for us. That they trying to destroy us. That they can't burn all the books of the law up, but they can destroy you. When folks want to separate the doctrine, right, from the doctrine that we've taught, you deviate from what the chief apostle gave us. You know what you did? You put a swine on that altar and you sacrifice it. And it's the same thing, whether you have swine on an altar making sacrifices or you change the doctrine. Guess what's going to happen? That gate is going to be closed. And so we thank Yah for the reminder that this feast is part of the gospel. You say, I don't see it in the New Testament. Guess what they didn't have in the New Testament? They didn't have the New Testament. Their Bible was the Old Testament. And so I'm going to say this again as we close. If Christ did it, if he said it, if the apostles did it, if it's found in the law, it's part of the Gospels. He said that the Gospel was written, was a product of the apostles and the prophets, Christ being the chief cornerstone. So we go into this feast on Tuesday, and we celebrate this feast beginning Tuesday with remembrance. I'm going to say this before we get there. Don't show up here because we said it's the feast of dedication. Don't show up here as part of your tradition to keep the feast. Show up here remembering what Yah did for us. That we got his words today. That we have Christ, Mashiach, today. Because of what they did. And we rejoice before him because this is an example of what he has promised to do for us now and in the future. Amen? Amen. We're not going to do the last slide. We'll include that next week, but we want to thank everybody. Again, we do apologize. We lost our video feed, but you guys are able to see and hear. But we want to thank all those who have joined us today on our Facebook stream, #Restoration Gospel, and those who joined us on our Bethel TV1 YouTube channel. Again, the Feast of Dedication begins on the 24th, which is Tuesday, and it goes until January 1st. January 31st is our last night of the feast. And so we all look forward to that feast. We want to remind you that we have our live podcast coming out in January in just another month, Restoration Podcast with the Elders. We want you to go to all our streaming platforms, subscribe. We're going to drop it in January, the second or third week. So we ask that you go subscribe now on our YouTube channel at My Restoration Podcast. It's a Restoration Podcast with the Elders, with myself, Elder Avery, and Elder Nate. We got a lot of good content. I'm excited about it. I think that's all we have. Is that it? I think that's it. So on behalf of Bethel Temple and College and on behalf of our late restored Chief Apostle, Dr. Aman, I'm Elder Al, I want to depart you as we greeted you by saying Shabbat Shalom.